Hello and welcome to this episode of Focus On. I'm Akin Obakeye. On today's show, we'll beam the spotlight on the 2024 Going Global Africa Conference by the British Council and partners as they seek to provide a platform that fosters regional and global engagement in tertiary education. This year, Nigeria plays host to the first regional conference in Africa. Let's catch a glimpse of major talking points at the conference. It's the 20th year of Going Global, the first regional conference in Sub-Saharan Africa, here in Nigeria. The Going Global Africa Conference witnessed over 400 delegates and stakeholders in both the public and private sectors in Africa. With the theme Building Sustainable and Relevant Tertiary Education Institutions and Systems in Africa, the conference kicks off with some comments centered on the role of partnerships in promoting Africa's tertiary education system.
We do realize, and Madeline mentioned this, that many of you in your own countries are working hard to build your own tertiary systems. And we realize that we need to work in stronger partnerships with you. So yes, of course, we want to encourage students to come and research and study in the UK. Of course, we'll continue to support scholarships like Chevening and Commonwealth, which are pretty amazing. I mean, they've supported around 100,000 students over the last 40, 50 years. And we will continue to work to welcome people to the UK higher education ecosystem. But we also know, as Madeline said, Africa's growing. It has a hugely young population. It's going to be 2.5 billion people by 2050. Is that the figure I think you mentioned there? So you need to harness the demographic dividend, and we need to work harder to build institutions that are sustainable, more resilient. There are other things that we want to build on. So there's this issue of transnational education partnerships. My experience of this is the transnational education partnership that we've agreed in Nigeria just recently. And it's creating more linkages between Nigerian higher education institutions and UK universities. And we hope in time that it's going to unlock more finance, more expertise, more partnerships between UK institutions and Nigerian institutions. That is a win-win. That we are effectively exporting UK expertise, but we're doing it in order to build stronger, more resilient higher education institutions in Nigeria. And that's incredibly exciting. It's part of a wider UK education strategy, international education strategy.
This is a platform that allows us to bring together tertiary education senior leaders, policymakers and industry experts to debate the future of further and higher education. And this year, there are two key points to make. One, the focus is firmly on Africa. And two, can I just stress that for the UK government, the key word in all of this is partnership. This is about partnerships. We'll be tackling one of the most pressing priorities of our time, which is ensuring the sustainability and the relevance of tertiary education systems and institutions in Africa. The theme is a critical one that can help us identify the key solutions to equip Africa's youth with the skills and opportunities they need to lead the continent into a prosperous future. The UK's international education strategy emphasises the importance of education as a tool for social and economic transformation. It sets out the UK government's ambition to foster strong, internationally connected education systems that enable knowledge sharing, innovation, and a welcoming environment for students globally. In Africa, this has to include listening to African voices and leaders to develop respectable and equitable UK-Africa partnerships that enhance people-to-people links, that support research collaborations and align educational goals with the evolving needs of society, all on the basis of mutual respect.
With Africa becoming the world's fastest growing region, there's a need to harness the human and social capital development. Stakeholders believe tertiary education remains out of reach for many of Africa's poorest and most marginalized. What is needed to close this gap?
The 7 aspirations of the African Union should never be forgotten as we plan education in our countries. And I do know that sitting here, majority of us already know the aspirations. We want a better Africa. We want better education. We cannot have an Africa that's prosperous if we ignore education. And it's not just about education, but education across the board. I'm also pleased to know that we all know that Africa now is strategizing for the next decade. The African Union Agenda 2063 moves now into acceleration. We cannot accelerate Africa without education. Education across the board. And I also know, and I do know some of you know, the fact that thinking about the future in the next 10 years, we are talking about moonshots. Every country in Africa must be at least middle-income country, reach middle-income status. We want an Africa that's more integrated. The good stories we're hearing about Nigeria, can we hear these stories in other member states? Because you have potential to influence other member states within Africa.
We have different job boards across Africa, particularly speaking in Nigeria, Jobaman, Nigeria. I can tell you, as of today, we have over 3,000 listings or job roles right now on our platform. And I can tell you, it's going to be a horrendous task filling 20% of them. So she's right. 100, 5 applications, 100 young people apply, and you can't even complete that completely. So the quality of training remains a pressing concern that many young people face, as well as individuals and organizations from the private sector. Many African graduates are underemployed due to inadequate skills training. About 57% of them that are employed in Africa are undereducated, and about 29% of them are underskilled, leaving many graduates ill-prepared for the available jobs. In 2021, 60% of the employers across Africa reported a significant gap amongst graduates in Africa. From the Jobaman job skills analysis we did for 3 sectors, which included the agri sector, the digital sector, and the creative sector, it was clear that one of the major challenges we have is that there is a huge gap between the technical skills requirement and especially the soft skills requirement needed to fulfill any job-related roles.
We intentionally brought Going Global Africa 2024 to Africa to look at the challenges and the opportunities in the African context. So we could have conversations that are timely and relevant to policymakers, to practitioners, to academics, to industry leaders, and to young people in Africa. So the British Council we've brought together, we've worked for a very long time. I mean, 80 years in Nigeria, 90 years as a global organisation. So this builds on our work, our longevity, our focus on youth, our focus on partnerships, and really brings the spirit of what we do in education, where we work from basic education through to higher education, TVET and transnational education, but bring all that together, bring the stakeholders together and have conversations that are relevant to the needs of Africa now. And not just conversations, but turn those conversations, turn that energy that you talked about into action to transform the future of education on the continent.
With the British Council marking its 90th anniversary and 80 years of working with and in Nigeria, it's not a doubt why Nigeria plays host to this maiden edition for Africa. But beyond that, is Nigeria setting the standards in educational development in Sub-Saharan Africa?
The rapid transformation in Nigeria university system have been shaped by various factors. including the initial goal of producing needed manpower, requirement to serve the colonial administration, and the post-colonial developmental priorities of a country. Today, a national university system with the supervision of the National University Commission has been substantially transformed into an indigenous 21st century Nigeria institution with modernized curricula tailored to the needs of contemporary society. One of the recent transformations was the introduction of the core curriculum and minimum academic standard called CCMAS, which came into operation in September of 2023. The CCMAS lay emphasis on application of information communication technology, critical thinking, entrepreneurship program, and interdisciplinary courses. One of the innovative aspects of CCMAS is that it makes provision for only 70% of the university curricula, while the remaining 30% is set aside for individual universities to use in addressing their peculiar areas of needs. Another transformation in the Nigeria university system is the introduction of the National University Commission of the Transnational Education, which was recently launched and is already bearing early fruits with significant interest across the global higher education community to invest in the Nigeria education system. The Federal Ministry of Education, together with the National University Commission, are willing to partner with institutions and governments across Africa and the United Kingdom in a mutually beneficial and high-quality transnational educational partnership. Needless to say that despite these giant strides in the Nigeria university system, challenges still persist. The challenges of inadequate funding, shortage of qualified staffs, problems of access and inability to accommodate large numbers of qualified Nigerian youths seeking university education. Of course, these challenges are by no means peculiar to Nigeria.
This is a country that has been attuned to a new level of expectation, because of the promise, that university education holds, in changing the narrative for the country. There is no human civilization today that has made it without the pivotal role of its university system. And that's, we can be an exception as Nigeria. Universities, are the heart of our opportunities. Our life choices, by and large, will always gravitate around the investment that we make in university education and the exposure, that we give our people. So, this is a country that is in a hurry, to bequeath a well-educated workforce, 21st century workforce, that is not just culturally educated, but is talents that will unlock the huge talents, that will unpack the huge talents of people that are digitally educated, people that are entrepreneurially educated, to bolster our research capability and capacity, to make sure that universities, fulfill their mission of impacting, society and solving some of the very pressing issues that are confronting mankind and the country.
From partnerships to transnational education and the need to scale up technical and vocational education and training in Africa, several panel sessions highlighted issues not peculiar only to the continent.
The key to having a successful T&E partnership is obviously built on very, very solid relationships between the partner in Africa and the partner in the UK or overseas. So the University of Dundee has got a very strong strategic partnership with the University of Lagos. That's been developing over 6 years. We have undertaken capacity building for staff at the University of Lagos in professional services and academic staff, and that's helped develop our level of understanding of how things operate here in Nigeria, and has enabled my colleagues to develop very strong relationships with colleagues at the University of Lagos and vice versa. And based on this firm strong relationship, we've been able to take forward our plan for a joint program, and that is not just about students coming in a one-way direction. It's about having a proper collaboration so students can understand the development of law both from the perspective of Nigeria in the Global South and the perspective of the Global North. And as they have to undertake their dissertation from a comparative process, that really embeds this approach that's showing mutual respect between the legal traditions of the Global South and the Global North. And we see this as having a really sort of sustainable benefit for both institutions. So students are able to learn at two leading law schools. They will be able to develop their understanding. They may decide to sort of stay back for a couple of years in the UK, take advantage of the post-study work. But then when they return to Nigeria or elsewhere in Africa, they're able to take advantage of that experience and their education to develop their careers.
It's coming to a critical point where both the UK government, UK universities, and African government and African universities understand that for the sustainability of higher education, in terms of the depth, the breadth, quality of education, exchange programs, access to funding, and a whole range of parameters to be sustainable and to work appropriately, TNA is a platform and an agenda that has come to stay. But the trouble is, TNA is being viewed from different perspectives, and because people have delved into TNA in the past, and some have had maybe like very bad experiences because it wasn't done critically and in the right way. And so there's this notion that the fact that if you go into TNA, it has to be done properly, which is the reason why, for example, the British Councils put together this framework that actually helps to folks to understand how you can run TNA partnerships sustainably. So the issues around mutual interest, financial viability, or issues around staff development, leadership framework within the TNA partnership. Think about things like how would you extend mutuality so both partners are on the same field. There's co-ownership, there's respect across the partnership. These are the things that will make TNE grow from one level to the next for it to be sustained.
The core of British Council role is to build connections and relationship and trust between countries where we operate and the UK. And being here today among African representatives, we've shared insights that come from the ground, from the heart of Africa and other countries where we operate, and we've listened and opened a space for sharing from experts from across Africa and the UK, and then this conversation leads to what we believe is the magic of organic partnerships happening. So whether it's just starting to clarify the opportunities or build trust or build connections, this is the heart of what British Council is here to do.
We're on the way there. The thinking has started. The efforts to try and get TVET to be taken seriously, because currently it suffers from a bit of an image problem, right? Everybody wants to go to university, everybody wants to go sit in an office. And so TVET feels like a second choice that people go to. So there's a lot of work, advocacy that needs to be done to make it be seen as something that is important. If your job is in TVET, it's great. It can be a source of livelihood and all that. So there is that. The second is what I've just talked about, which is the financing. We need more investment from governments. And it was great to hear somebody talk about AU and how there might be opportunities. Because I think the problem also has to be looked at from a continental point of view, so that we're leveraging what it is that will benefit all of us. So that is the other thing. I think young people themselves need to have a bit of a stronger voice in how TVET evolves. A lot of the solutions have to be system-based, and that means that sometimes we get lost in looking at the system, forgetting that it's really meant to provide some solutions. And these are solutions that have to do with life prospects. And I think that makes it even more important. It's not simply giving somebody a skill, giving them a skill for life. And I think TVET can do that. So we need to figure out a way to make sure that we're hearing from young people's voices. We're making sure they're engaged in how TVET evolves. We're starting to look ahead to what kind of professions, occupations lie ahead, right? These days, everybody's talking about digital skills. Yes, so how do we do that so we don't get stuck in plumbing and carpentry and all that? Those are important, yes, for a lot of the infrastructure that many African countries are embarking on, but we also need to be quite progressive.
As part of our mandate, we have had to establish a standalone directorate for skills development and entrepreneurship, to champion, to deepen, to escalate, as it were, the notion of entrepreneurship, the ability of the Nigerian graduates, to demonstrate those attributes, communication attributes, digital literacy, critical thinking, the ability to make, to set up business and make profit. Imagine a medical doctor who is strictly scientifically and medically trained, who has no business acumen, but who would have gone through the gamut of entrepreneurial education, who can actually, expand move the coast of his business to another level. So these are very, interesting times for higher education, because higher education is the only, a subsector that holds a promise for the country and for the future.
In South Africa, as an example, I see in basic education that they're investing in entrepreneurial skills development, and these, what we have been calling soft skills, the communication, the leadership, but are really core skills, because you can be technically skilled in anything, but if you don't know how to present yourself into the world, to communicate, to connect with people, then you're not going to be able to make the change that you want to. So I think it's really important that we're looking at the education system throughout, and we're understanding that it starts in early childhood development and basic education. And then in terms of TVET, to your point, I think we are still lacking parity of equity between higher education and TVET, and this is really a problem, not just for the continent but for the world, because actually so many of the key skills that we need to be able to address global challenges are people that are being trained in applied skills, if I can put it that way, in our TVET further education colleges and so forth, in the technical and vocational training. So I am a strong advocate that we need to be investing more in our TVETs. We need to be also being more agile in their ability to respond to the global challenges.
Going Global is set to be held in London next year. Stakeholders hope to ride on the dialogues and partnerships to forge a more sustainable development in Africa's tertiary education sector.
This is really important for all countries that don't have a really established higher education system and don't have the capacity themselves to meet the demand of their young people. And I think one of the really useful things that the British Council has done, together with the National Universities Commission in Nigeria, is develop guidelines so that universities from other countries, not just the UK, but any other countries, will find it easier and will have greater clarity about the rules if they want to set up in Nigeria to offer education there. And I think that's a really important way to meet the really quite urgent need for more higher education for the young population.
What Going Global does is it creates a platform for discussions. And what we saw is a lot of engagement, collaboration, a lot of knowledge sharing from across Africa and the UK. So for me, that already achieves the purpose for which we hosted Going Global for. Because what we wanted to do is to have African stakeholders talking to other Africans. A lot of the conversations that take place happen to be what we call north to south, between African delegates and their international partners. But this time around, we had a lot of Africans proposing solutions based on the African context. So that contextualization is very important, and that's my biggest takeaway.
Part of the building the partnerships, part of the stakeholder engagement, we will follow up to find out what's come. So it's fantastic that we're here in Abuja, but what happens as a result when everybody gets on the flights tonight and tomorrow? So we will follow up. Next year's Going Global will hold in London. That will be a global conference, but we will intentionally build in some Africa-specific panel discussions, side meetings, so that we can continue and check back in about what's happened as a result. But it's not all about, obviously, the British Council driving this forward. This is about people making the connections, the friendships, the relationships, so that they can now go on to forge those relationships, those partnerships, and continue to work together. They don't need us holding the hand.
It's the opportunity for everyone to have a voice at the conference. So from wherever they were in the international education sector, that's the beauty of bringing everyone together. So there are no borders. at a conference like this. It's breaking down the barriers, it's giving a global dialogue. And whilst this is focused on a regional dialogue from Africa, there are other opportunities to talk about in a global context and bringing people together. It's a wonderful convening power, and it's listening to others and bringing people together to learn.
But that's all on this episode of Focus on Amaking Obakeye. Until next time, bye for now.